June the 8th, 2023. As a commission, we operate under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Chapter 26 of the Town of Danvers General Bylaws, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. The way our meeting goes, after each applicant presents his or her request and the board has had time to ask questions and discuss the project, we will accept questions from the audience. Because this is a public meeting, it's required by law that you give your name and address first. Although we may disagree on the issues raised, all persons present during this meeting are expected to be civil to all other meeting attendees. This includes the members of the commission, staff, abutters, concerned citizens, and property owners, as well as project applicants. We also request that you confine your questions to the project and only as it pertains to the Wetlands Act. We cannot handle, nor do we have jurisdiction over, matters such as noise or traffic. All problems not related to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Danvers Wetlands Protection Bylaw must be taken up with the other appropriate boards. Before we start on our agenda, we'll have a roll call. Peter Wilson is present. Vanessa Curran.
Present.
Ann McGill.
Present.
And Michael Splain.
Yeah.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is a permit extension request for 7 Doty Ave, DEP file number 14-1344. Georgia, could you just give us a little background on this particular situation?
And while Peter, do you mind pulling your mic in? I don't know if I couldn't hear you that well, so I think
Better?
hopefully, yeah. And we'll let the audience know. 7 Doty Avenue received an order of conditions from the commission to improve the present pier to match the Chapter 91 license they have. Right now, the floats currently sit on the mud, and Mr. Riebel here has a plan to bring them off the mud and build a substantially much better pier. He can speak to it, but it sounds like time ran out and he needs a year extension to get things in order. So I had sent them a letter just warning them, hey, things are gonna expire. It's in your best interest to request from the commission for another year. So he is here tonight to simply ask for that 1-year extension. If the commission does approve it, it would push it out to July 9th, 2024.
Okay.
And the applicant is here if we wanna talk to them, but this is not a public hearing, so of course we can talk to the audience, but just to preface that there's no abutters were notified. It's not a big public hearing, it's administrative.
Okay. And the applicant is here, and would you like to elaborate on that?
Perfect.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Pete Clement with Mr. Rebo. All right, what we're looking for is just an extension for a year to get the pier done. All right.
Okay, and do you have plans for construction, or is that?
Oh, yeah, they were submitted a while ago. You know, what do you mean, as far as the new plans?
Previously approved, right?
Yeah.
It's setting
yeah, all
someone
the
up to
plans
do
are
the
there.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been 3 years.
All we're looking for the plans that were submitted, all right, all we're looking for is another year extension, that's all.
And my question is simply, do you have plans to start and complete within that year's extension?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, there's been a little sickness in the family and the rest of that. And it kind of put a little bump in the road, and we're going to get started real soon. We should be
Okay,
done
good.
before the year's up.
All right, that's the only question I have. So Mike, do you have any questions?
Just, I read his letter, and COVID happened, hell, he had some health issues, life happens.
Sure.
I have no problem with it.
Ann, have any questions?
No. Thank you.
you.
Vanessa?
No questions.
This is not a public hearing, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if someone can make a motion that we give the applicant a year's extension on his OOC, let's do that.
I'll move that we grant a 1-year extension to the applicant to complete the project at 7 Doty Ave, DEP file number 14-1344.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay,
thank you much.
Good luck. Next up is a request for a certificate of compliance at 58 River Street, DEP now file number 14-1311. The applicant is Michael Landers. Mike, if you just want to,
Yeah, my name is Mike Landers. I'm an attorney in Topsfield. The address is 447 Boston Street. I represent the condominium complex that's there. Actually, we got involved with this because we were representing the seller of one of those units. This particular order of conditions has expired. They never began the work on that. None of the work was ever done. However, obviously, the buyer wanted to make sure that the certificate of compliance was taken care of, and so we've worked with the town to make sure that we get the application put in place and to get this all squared away so that, you know, I remember Splain can probably tell you too, we deal with a lot of these expired order of conditions that haven't really been taken care of properly, and this would be a good way to be able to get this one taken
this
care of
was an
properly.
encumbrance on the,
Well, it's not an encumbrance, but it definitely is a problem in regards to selling, so.
okay, simple enough. And this is, again, it's not a public hearing, is that right, Georgia?
That's correct.
So any questions? Mike, have any questions?
I don't know.
Ann, questions?
No.
Vanessa, any questions?
No.
Okay, if someone can make a motion, we'll grant a certificate of compliance.
I'll make
Just to staff, that has to be worded a certain way since the work was never done. So-
Yes, so on the certificate of compliance form, there's a box that says incomplete order, work never started. So I will be checking off that box.
All right, well, then I'll make a motion if you want me to make a motion that
Yep.
we issue a certificate of compliance indicating in the certificate that the work was never begun.
Second.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you very much.
enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia.
I'll see you,
Next.
Mike.
And next up is a minor modification request for 3 Tibbetts Ave, DEP file number 14-1372. The applicant is Margaret Kelly, and is Mr. Griffith here to represent her?
No, the applicant, sorry, did I have the memo different from the agenda?
It's 57 Rivers. though.
57
The
Rivers.
next
No,
one.
on the agenda, it's 3 Tibbetts Ave.
Got it, okay. Mike, does that work for you? Or Bob?
Yeah, that's fine.
Apologies.
So, good evening.
It's a different agenda.
In late 2021, the commission issued an order of conditions to Meg Kelly to basically renovate her house at 3 Tibbetts Avenue. And actually, I've got the plan you approved here. And as you may recall, small dwelling at this particular location. When construction got started, they discovered some problems with the building foundation. That's all been repaired. Mr. McNiff has been responsible for construction of the building. It's framed and most of the siding's on. It's well underway. But during the process, these foundation problems that were discovered in the house were also discovered to exist in the garage. And there's some structural problems with the garage that are really not worth repairing. So what Mrs. Kelly would like to do is to replace the garage. So we prepared a plan that shows, I'm going to just get that out of that light a little bit maybe. Is that an okay location?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the yellow box on the plan here is the existing garage location. The blue box is the proposed garage location. And it's rotated a little bit just to square up with the house a little bit and get it a little closer to the house than the existing garage. We're also showing some stepping stones to go from the garage to the back door of the house. So pretty straightforward. We think it's a minor modification primarily because the lot is currently under construction. So the hay bales are up, it's all disturbed. We're not adding to the disturbance by constructing the garage. I realize that it would have been more typical and more helpful if we knew about this problem at the time the original order of conditions was issued, but we didn't. And at the same time, we just are not going to be increasing any significantly, in our opinion anyways, any impacts to wetland resource areas. I would also point out that the garage is going to be compliant with flood zone requirements, which the current garage really isn't, so we're going to have some flood openings that will allow water to pass in and out. It's going to be structurally sound. So really there's some benefit to modifying the order in the manner that we're proposing. And that's it.
Just one quick question. The garage floor is typically at grade.
Yes.
How does that work with when you have to build things up to make it flood compliant?
Right, so the flood elevation at this site is elevation 10. We're proposing a garage elevation of 8.25, as you can see there. So in the 100-year storm, you know, the garage is going to have 1.75 feet of water in it. And so the flood openings would allow, you know, the water to move back and forth across the garage. Mrs. Kelly would be advised to get her car out of there during the storm to higher ground, naturally.
So the openings would be within the frame of the building, not necessarily the foundation?
At the grade level, that's correct. So there'll be a slab at 8.25. The flood openings will be directly on top of that elevation, allowing the water to come and go. The house that Mr. McNiff is building now has been raised up so that the flood waters would only go in the crawl space. And you can see on that plan it says finished floor elevation 13.7. So Mrs. Kelly's house will be well above the flood elevation, you know, once construction is completed.
Okay, just to clarify, Georgia, it's either we grant a minor modification or you'd have to go through the whole OOC process again and have it amended?
It would be a formal amendment with a new public hearing and notifications, and Mr. Griffin would come back and essentially present the same scenario, but a formal amendment to the order would be had. But under the bylaw, we do allow minor modifications in which if there's not substantial alteration from the original plan, they can be approved administratively by the commission.
Okay. And my understanding is there's just a small amount of additional square footage?
Yeah, I think we go from, you know, 500 or 510 square feet existing to about 575 square feet for the proposed garage. It's about 21 by 24, 25 now, and it's going to be a 24 by 24, you know, standard two-car garage.
Okay, nothing else as far as the approved project is
That's
changing?
correct. No changes to that.
Okay, all right, thanks. Mike, any questions?
So the footprint is getting bigger?
Slightly, yes.
But it's not, there's no further encroachment or involvement with, no?
No.
Okay. And I'm just curious, so why aren't you coming up higher when you said she has to pull the garage out because the
So the garage is very...
car out of the
Yep.
garage, I mean?
The garage is very close to the street, and so as a result, the garage elevation has to be pretty close to the street. We can't have her going up a really steep, you know, incline to
I
get into
see.
her garage.
I was just curious.
Yep.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Ann, any questions?
When would the construction begin? And how long do you think it's going to take?
So the house is under construction. Our goal is to construct the garage while the house is being finished. I mean, the frame is up, but there's a lot of work inside the building still to do. So this won't extend the time of construction overall for the project.
Thank you.
All set?
Yep.
Vanessa?
So are there erosion controls in place now, or would they be that, I don't see any on the plan?
Well, it's only because you're zoomed in a little bit. So, but on the site plan, we can see that we have erosion controls along this line and the back line, and then there's an existing wall, small wall, that contains the erosion into that area right now.
So those are in place and would remain in
Yes, they are,
place?
and they'll remain in place throughout construction.
Okay, all set.
And construction is ongoing,
That's correct.
right?
And I will note, our field inspector, Brian Cassidy, visits Tippett's Street about 2 to 3 times a week. So there's active inspections on this property and others on the street.
There's several projects going on down there,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Okay.
I just had a follow-up on the, there's a 35-foot coming through the garage, is that right?
Right.
So by making it bigger, is there a further encroachment that will require some sort of waiver or not?
Looks like almost a swap, like,
Yeah,
it
it
looks like
does.
there's
It looks pretty even
reducing
Steven
some
to
area
me,
on the
right.
right side and then gaining some area to the top.
And we're also getting rid of that shed out back. That's a pretty good sized rectangle there too.
And I will note a waiver was issued for the original work on the house. You'll see this new deck in the rear is really what was proposed a portion in the 35. So the waiver was issued for that. And then if we were to look at a calculation, it's well under the allowable 10 and 20%, considering how minimal.
So no further waiver is required, you're saying?
They've already, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That-
I would
that's my
say,
question.
I would want to look at it further in more detail or really question it if they were proposing substantial new impervious inside that 35 or 50. But considering the garage is already there, it's that new 74 square feet. And if we were to say all of it's within the 35, that's well under 10% of the overall
Yeah,
area on the lot.
all right, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm inclined to just say this is a minor modification, so unless anyone disagrees, why don't we just make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we issue a minor modification request for 3 Tibbetts Avenue, DEP file number 14-1372.
Second the motion.
So we're making the finding at this point? We're just making the finding? Is
So
that-
what,
just we're
what you
granting-
can do is you, to Vanessa's vote, just acknowledge the May 26, 2023 plan, which is the one that's presented right now. And that would replace a plan that the order of conditions references.
Okay,
So we
can we
need a,
just include that in the motion?
Yeah, or Vanessa can just say, as shown on the May.
As shown on the May 26, 2023 plan.
Perfect.
All right, I second then.
all right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, good luck.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Next up is a notice of intent for 57 River Street, DEP file number 14-1399. The applicant is Jonathan Penny, and I think Mr. Griffith is here to represent him as well.
That's 2 minutes.
Is that right? There's some questions that George had on the memo. We
Yes.
just make sure everybody asks those.
Okay. Okay.
Am I good to go, or should I?
No, go ahead.
Okay,
please.
all right, good. All right, so thank you. So Bob Griffin on behalf of John Penny. And the project is, Mr. Penny has a number of site improvements and house improvements that he would like to undertake on the property.
Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you just go a little closer to the microphone?
May have him turn.
Is it on? Sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I just couldn't hear very well.
Good, and go a little slower, please.
It was more the volume.
Yeah, no, volume.
Testing 1, 2, 3, is that better?
I think Georgia was going to see if he could turn it
Okay.
up a little.
Well, and I might have screwed him up
There
because
we
I was,
go.
I was,
All right.
I had taken it out and I was holding it at the last presentation, so perhaps that caused some problems with the AV setup. In any event, and I'll try to slow down a little bit. So Mr. Penny has a number of improvements that he would like to conduct at his property. And you may recall that there was an issue at the end of River Street where the street actually encroached into his property. And so I think maybe 2 summers ago, there was some repaving work to remove the encroaching pavement. The cul-de-sac essentially at the end was on Mr. Penny's property. And so that was removed. And I think John started doing some landscaping work and was cautioned by the commission to, listen, you need to get your notice of intent in order and get things done. Mr. Penny's been a little bit out of the country over the last year or two, and so it took us a while to get here, but we're glad to be here this evening and be happy to describe all of his proposed improvements. It's probably one of these things where you're going to want to have a site walk, so I'll just sort of go through them relatively quickly, and then we can perhaps look at any of these in more detail, or I can answer your questions as well as best I can. And by the way, Mr. Penny, I think planned to be here, and I don't see him obviously, so I'm not sure what happened there, but I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in the next few minutes. So he would have some background information for the commission as well. First, the driveway that comes in off of River Street, there's a little unpaved area that needs to be improved, and that's in conjunction with that pavement work in the street that I mentioned. So that's a pretty minor item. He's proposing to put a sort of a 2 to 3 foot tall landscaping wall along his property line, so that'll run along the edge of River Street, and it'll be a stone masonry construction. It also will return back on the property line to the north at his neighbor's property there. He's got a little bit of utility work associated with his street utilities. He wants to add some spare conduits for electricity and telephone purposes. One of the things Mr. Penny's very interested in is energy conservation and energy generation. And so part of his proposed improvements involve installing some solar panels on the roof. And he expects that when that happens, he's going to have to improve his electrical service so that he can get electricity back into the municipal system. So those are the electrical improvements there. There's currently a water shutoff to shut off the property from the water main. The water shutoff is actually inside his lot. It used to be at the edge of the cul-de-sac. So his proposal is just to move that water shutoff back into the street so that the city would have ready access to shut off his water if it ever became necessary. So that's another utility item, again, fairly minor. And I think sort of the last and the relatively minor stuff is there's a vegetable garden proposed at the end of his driveway and building addition. At the house itself, the existing deck, sort of on the right side of the house as you're looking at it, is in sort of dilapidated condition and needs to be reconstructed. So the deck reconstruction is essentially the same footprint as existing, same elevation as existing, but there's a significant amount of sort of carpentry work and probably some posts that need to be replaced in that process. So that's on his list of house improvements. He's proposing a pretty good-sized garage addition at the back of the property. Mr. Penny likes to repair his vehicles and the like, and so he's providing some space so that he can store some vehicles that are currently off the property, on the property, under proper weather and conditioning, so that he can work on them as he needs to. And then lastly, coming off the house is a leader and a cistern. He'd like to capture roof runoff and be able to pump it for on-site irrigation purposes. So there'd be a tank installed in the ground at that location with a pump for that purpose. I think from a wetland resource point of view, the more significant work is the proposed seawall, which is this line at the right side of the house as you're looking at the plan, so really the south side, the river side, along the shoreline. And if you look at a pictometry view, you can see along the shoreline there's some sort of a riprap stone in that area. All along here is this exposed riprap, and it sort of tapers off a little bit beyond the flagpole. And here's our client, our applicant, Mr. Penny. We were just getting started, John, and I was just explaining that you might have some background about the site as I'm going through the items, but we were just describing some of the house improvements, some of the utility improvements, and now we just started talking about the seawall. But we've located the seawall, you can see, above mean high water, so it's really not going to be getting wet constantly, but during storm events or extreme high tides, that high water line will come up and touch the seawall. The top of the seawall has been set at elevation 10.5, so that's about 6 inches above the 100-year flood elevation. So there's, if there's a lot of sea level rise or things like that, there's still a possibility of getting some water beyond the wall, but I think that's a pretty good elevation to use for this project. As you get down to the site, if we have a site walk, you'll see that there's some sparse vegetation, particularly up at this end and down at this end, which is where the salt water comes in every once in a while and kills the grass. And so by raising the seawall up, we're going to protect the property from future storms. We're also going to be improving the vegetation in that area. We have a central area. It's about 25 feet by 25 feet. Which is proposed to be sort of sand, like a beach. And so the lot, as you can see in the picture, is primarily lawn right now, so that area would be changed from lawn to sand and really primarily for recreational purposes. And it's got we've got a couple of stairs to get from that sandy area down to the shoreline, so you can walk in the shoreline as they do occasionally right now. A little little further to the west here, as the wall ends, this area here is about 60 feet long. It's proposed to be salt-tolerant grasses, so probably switchgrass. Switchgrass has deep roots and will grow with some occasional saltwater exposure, and so that's a way of protecting the shoreline in the area that doesn't really have the riprap today, but I think it'll provide some long-term stability to the shoreline that it really lacks. And you'll see some erosion in that area as you come out to the site, and you can almost see a little bit in that picture as well. We're proposing to make some landscaping improvements as well. I'll mention this area here. As you look at the photograph, it's kind of this area where these trees are popping up through the aerial photograph. But this is an area that when you get to the sidewalk, you'll see it has relatively bare soil, probably doesn't get a lot of sun. And so we're really just proposing to fill in that area with native plants that are shade tolerant, probably salt tolerant. It won't, there'll be no longer an attempt to try to construct a lawn in that area, so we'll pull the lawn area back a little bit, and that's about 2,400 square feet of plantings there. Up closer to River Street, we have a 700 square foot area that sort of forms an L along the street. That's the native planting area there. And against his neighbor's property line there at 53 River Street, there's another 900 square feet of native planting areas as proposed landscaping. So that's about a total of 4,000 square feet of plant area related to the improvements that are proposed here. And I think that pretty well summarizes all of the proposed items on our list. Be happy to address any questions at this time.
A couple of quick questions, and I'll pass more questions along to the board. Your proposed beach area,
Yep.
it looks to me like the seawall will cut right across that?
Right, so it'll come right up to it. So this is an area that currently is lawn, right, sort of right off the deck, and it would be sand instead of lawn.
But there'll be no access to the water?
A set of stairs right here.
Okay, from the beach down to the water?
That's correct.
Okay, and I see it on your drawing there, but you did not mention that there's some significant salt marsh there?
Yes, yeah. And we can sort of see it in the aerial photograph as well, with the salt marsh area down here. There's a relatively thick and dense stand of phragmites through here. This line, so hard to see, that separates out. If we could scroll down a little bit, please, Georgia. Yeah. So we have a pretty dense stand of phragmites from here to about here, and then there's salt marsh below that, and then you get into the creek that goes up towards the condominium complex.
Okay, yeah.
And we're pretty much proposing to leave that area alone. We're not doing any alteration to this salt marsh grass here either. So again, our wall is uphill of the mean high water and no impact on salt marsh.
Now, there's seawall construction will be right next to the salt marsh, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you making plans to make sure the construction does not disturb the salt marsh?
Yeah, it's not a particularly deep construction project either. I think we've got a detail on there, but you know, these are the segmental concrete blocks. You dig down, you know, 1 or 2 feet, put a little crushed stone base in, and stack them up and go. So it's work that can happen relatively quickly. Here's a good cross section, and the existing stones, we'll just leave them where, you know, essentially next to the wall as we install the wall.
There's other seawalls down there, just actually across the street, they have the block seawall. Is that
Yep.
the same thing?
Similar, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I won't take all the questions. I'll give other people a chance. So Mike, any other questions?
No, I'd be interested in going on a site visit.
Yes. Okay, Ann, have any questions?
The Phragmites section is where again? Please point that out.
So on the photo, so these tall trees
Okay.
are here, and the phragmites are sort of between here and here. So on this plan, those tall trees are here, there, and the phragmites are, you know, closer to the creek, sort of west of that area. This phragmites to here is pretty dense.
And Phragmites move, they expand. Is there any way that you foresee preventing them from leaping over into the property there?
I guess I haven't really given that a whole lot of thought in this one. I know phragmites can be a pain in the neck, and we could potentially, you know, cut a trench or try to put some sort of barrier in there to prevent those roots from extending into this area that we propose to put natural vegetation in. But it's not on the
Do you
plan right
have
now.
a vegetation list that you're working with?
I don't think we have a list. I'm not sure that we included a list with our notice of intent, but I have, what we would intend to select from is the CZM coastal plant selection list. But I can provide more information about that at the site walk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all set, Ann?
Yes.
Vanessa, questions?
So I noticed, I think that black dashed line that's kind of through the garage, is that the edge of the flood zone?
This one says 10 on it, yep. That's elevation 10, that's the flood zone.
Okay, so what do you have for, are you putting flood vents in the garage, or how are you handling that with it being in the flood zone, portions of it?
Right, so this is, you know, land subject to coastal storm flowage, so we can place fill in the flood zone. In this case, we're going to raise the garage floor up to elevation 11.5, so it'll be above the elevation at which we would need to install flood vents.
Okay. And then is there any concern about saltwater intrusion into the cistern for irrigation?
So the cistern would simply be roof runoff going into a tank and then being pumped out. So we're not going to allow, you know, groundwater to get into the tank.
I just was wondering if it was flooded, would it like be able to come in through the top?
That's a good point. I suppose it might. So we might have to provide some watertight connection there. That's a good point.
I also had a question on the calculations.
Yeah.
If you can, Georgia, can you move over to the table and make it a little bigger, please?
Okay.
Do you want the newer calculations for the 35? Just give me
Please.
1 second. I
Sure.
realized I did not pull up the most recent plan. I apologize. Sorry, guys. The pressure's on when
We're all watching you.
I know.
I'm not looking.
There we go. This one, right?
Yes.
Vanessa?
I just had some questions about the proposed impacts. So for the 0 to 35, is that 365 square feet account for the wall?
Right, so it's about a 150-foot long wall. It's about 2 feet wide, so that's where the 365 came from.
Okay. And then how is there 0 square feet between the 35 and the 50?
So there's, I think the point here was there was no buildings proposed in the 0 to 50-foot no-build zone here.
Okay. But does the wall need a building permit?
You know, if it's over 4 feet, I suppose it does, yeah.
Okay.
The wall will also need to follow our floodplain bylaw, which says if you're adding structures or altering within the floodplain, it needs to have a building permit for flood purposes to show that it meets the elevation, it's appropriately elevated.
Okay.
So that's another layer. It is technically a building permit of some sort, but really it's an elevation certificate by an engineer like Bob that would provide that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So Georgia, with regards to that certificate, what do they need to show to get that certificate?
So he's going to show exactly the grade and elevation of the wall, the top of the wall, that it's above the base flood elevation for FEMA, that it's at 10.5 or whatever Bob has allocated, and same with the garage.
And who would issue that certificate?
It's an engineer. They provide it to the building inspector. The building inspector would then sign off on it.
Ah.
And that can coincide with the building permit for the garage, if he does the work at the same time, or it could just be separate.
Thank you.
I had another question about the sand beach area. How is there gonna be any way to prevent the erosion of the sand?
Well, it's going to be pretty flat.
Okay.
And it'll be a little bit below the wall elevation, at least particularly at the shoreline. Looks like we've got a 10.5 here, we've got 11 contour back here, so it is sloping down as it gets to the wall.
So it should be contained?
We want to keep, yes, we want it to be behind and below the wall a little bit.
Okay. And it's out of the, I was a little confused about the flood contour, to be honest, because it seems to stop in a couple places. So is that area in flood zone or not in flood zone?
So currently, the 10 comes in, it stops here, probably where it hits the building, and then it picks up again as it comes out the other side. This whole area here is elevation 9 outside the deck. I don't have elevations beneath the deck on this plan, but my recollection from having been out there and look at it is it's pretty close to the adjacent ground level, so the elevation below the deck is probably elevation 9 also.
Okay.
So currently, that area probably floods, in a flood event.
Okay. And you said the sand area is going to be more up to 10.5?
That's what the plan shows, and as we're talking about that issue, I'm thinking maybe I want to lower that a little bit, just so that there's no chance that water can run off the sand area and go into the river. So by depressing it a little bit, we can keep that area, so less susceptible to erosion.
I have a question for Georgia. If they're adding fill in the floodplain, do they have to provide compensatory flood storage?
That's a great question. In this instance, I'm not sure the difference between the maintained lawn and the sand base layer.
I'm thinking more of the garage.
Oh, the garage, I would almost reference Bob in that instance.
My answer to that is no. I think, we are in an area that's land subject to coastal storm flowage as opposed to bordering land subject to flooding. If this was bordering land subject to flooding, meaning inland flooding, we would have to, count every cubic foot of, flood volume that we impact. We would have to compensate for that equally. But that's not a performance standard associated with land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's different than the rail trail bridge crossing, when they put the abutments in Beaver Brook, that was inland
Right.
flooding.
Yep,
In this
okay.
case, there's obviously more space and more area for
Okay.
that flood.
Thanks for the clarification. I also would like to see the planting plan, just echoing that comment of Ann's.
Yep.
And I think that's all I have for now.
Okay, I have a couple of further questions. Has there been any consideration to, and I'm not even sure how this works, but for plantings to extend the salt marsh? From when I look at the picture, the salt marsh runs south to north, and there's a gap, and then there's a small amount of salt marsh farther to the north. Could we have some plantings in between here to enhance that salt marsh?
Let me take a look at that. So one of the thoughts, the observations I would make is that, the salt marsh is up, primarily elevation 4, 5, 6. It looks like it's marked coming down here 3 as well, but here's 3, 4 with 5 here. So there's sort of a broader area of the correct topography, south and north in that area. So it might end up having to be sort of a fringe of plants that can survive, but I'm certainly happy to take a look at it and try to
Would you
propose
please?
something, yeah.
Actually, is that your client's property, or is that, like,
So,
where does the property line end?
I don't remember his deed all that well, if his property goes to mean low water or mean high water, but it's mean low, okay.
Okay.
So it technically is, I don't think we'd have to plant plants, I don't think we'd need a Chapter 91 license, but if we were proposing any structures below mean high water, then we would certainly need a Chapter 91 license for that.
Okay.
And I think we wouldn't be planting plants below mean high water anyways, but probably, again, at mean high water, back to the wall.
if you give it some thought, that's,
Yep.
be good. And then the final question I have is, I saw somewhere there's a note, there was a violation that started this whole process. And by filling the notice of intent, that violation has been resolved.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect. Okay, any other questions from the board?
No.
Any questions from the public? Okay, and I'm thinking, anything else?
No, were there any questions? Additional?
I'm
Okay.
not sure if you were trying to make a point.
So John was reminding me that along the shoreline, there's a lot of broken glass. And so when we have a site walk, we just want to be very careful and wear appropriate footing or appropriate footwear.
No
So-
flip-flops.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Okay, so that's, did I ask for public comment? I did.
Yes, you did.
And we're all set?
Yes.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is we want to continue this hearing, correct?
Yep.
And that we'd like to schedule a site visit.
Our
So,
next meeting is June 22nd. Does that work for a continuance for you, Bob?
I think, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just thinking about a site walk, and we obviously would want to get it at, it doesn't have to be a dead low tide or something like that, but something close to low tide would be helpful. What kind of a time frame did you have in mind for the site walk?
I'm happy to look at the tide schedule and see what works for after work hours in the next 2 weeks,
Okay.
or possibly a weekend at low tide, and then I can reach out to the commission if that works for everyone.
Okay, I'm going to be out of town this weekend and next weekend, unfortunately.
Okay, but that leaves the weeks, right?
Weeks,
Work
yeah,
with
yeah, we have good, obviously good daylight, if I could
We have
just,
plenty of daylight.
Yeah,
um,
Yeah.
well, I'll let you figure it out.
okay, and I'll email, we'll
Okay.
figure that out, either end of this week or early next, we'll nail that down.
Great, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and we're all in agreement that we can continue until our meeting on the 22nd?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, if someone can make a motion to continue, we'll do that.
I'll make a motion, continue the public hearing for the notice of intent for 57 River Street, DEP file number 14-1399.
Second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll see you at a site visit, and then we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Great, thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is old or new business, minutes review and approval. We have 2 sets of minutes from 4/13, 2020, and from 8/25, 2022. I'm thinking the minutes is from 4/13, 2023.
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize, I made that mistake.
I
That
don't-
should be,
I don't think I saw the minutes on the draft
Looks like
agenda.
low tide
I
in
saw-
Danvers.
I
is
read the
on
minutes and I thought, oh, yes, because my name is mentioned there, so
I
it
was
had to
like-
be 23.
I was like, ooh, no minutes.
whoops,
So needless to say, I read neither set.
that's all right.
I read them.
Did 3 members happen to read?
Yes, I did. Did you guys read them?
Yes.
I didn't read the minutes.
Oh,
So just 2 of us?
yeah, 2 and 2.
All right, so we're gonna have to continue that then, right?
Okay.
That's absolutely, that way
Okay,
they're
so
on
does
the,
that require a motion, or are we just gonna have that come up again?
I'll bring it up for the next meeting. It's like
Okay.
it never happened.
Okay, and review the minutes.
Yes, George, I'm showing low tide for June 22nd, 9:19 a.m., so that's not probably gonna work, right?
No, but
That's-
we can do it anytime before the 22nd.
That's the day of our meeting. So we can
Yeah.
do it any day between now and then.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and the other item on the old and new business is a new members announcement, so I will give Georgia the honor of.
Yes. So we have 2 new members that were sworn in by the select board on Tuesday evening. One of them is Jonathan Gowries. He is going to be a full member serving a 3-year term. And I will let him introduce himself too. And also watch the select board meeting if you want to see his intro. But he is a wetland restoration expert. He also works in construction, sensitive area construction, and he has experience in invasive species management and stormwater best management practices. So that was, when we saw that on the talent pool form, you couldn't make it up. It's a perfect candidate for conservation. And he's younger, he's eager, he just moved to town, bought a house, and he's wanting to serve, so it's perfect position. And our second is an alternate named Mary Height, and she is a retired biology teacher with her master's in environmental science. So she has more of a science background, habitat, ecological focus. So I think we'll have two new minds on the commission that can give good input and comments. I hope to get them started June 22nd meeting. If that's a little too fast, it'll be first meeting in July. And then we'll have a full board. There'll be one alternate that's not filled. That position's still floating, but at that point, we'll have a full board with full 5 members.
It's good, we've gone a long time, we just, the
I know
five,
Chelsea
no,
left so
okay.
long ago, it seems like it's been
Yeah.
forever. So Jonathan will be filling Chelsea's position.
Right, but we haven't had alternates for
No.
years,
No.
so, good. Okay, and it's, yeah, it sounds like they're very well qualified
Yes.
commissioners, that's good. So Mike and I can kind of sit back a little
Well,
bit.
that's
Yes.
great, because I won't be here for the
When's
first
our
July
next,
meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
22nd, 2 minutes.
And maybe
Isn't
the
it
second, I don't know.
Hey,
Because
is
I'm
there a
going,
vacation?
no, I'm going to,
Today's the second
I'm,
Thursday.
have a new granddaughter.
So, wouldn't
My
it be
daughter
the
is having
29th?
the baby the end of June, and so she wants me to come out the
Wouldn't
4th
it be
of
the
July.
29th?
Because she has a doula to help her. I did, because at first I was gonna be the one to go with mom to the hospital.
Oh, yeah,
Should
that's
we
all
adjourn?
All right,
Yeah,
so
that's
first and second meeting.
Yeah,
Maybe in
possibly
May
for
not.
July,
Okay.
but not, definitely
You
not
right.
the first one.
All right.
Is this your first grandchild?
Yep.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
Hey.
you, thank you.
Okay, that's all I see for business on our agenda, so if someone makes a motion to adjourn,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye. Okay,
Thank you all.
see you, Bill.
Great
Yes.
questions, everyone.
Yes,
All those questions, both of you. Everyone. Yeah,
Well-
asking for a planting list.
Well, you know, the thing that,
We'll see you, Mike.
because we were out there on the river today, you know?
Look at he's gone.
You must be hungry.
But the, no, but being out there today, really, you know, then all of a sudden you can see things, think about things.
Okay.
Cistern inundation by saltwater. Best question.
Vanessa, we were out on the boat today, like sunbathing.
Oh, I
and
know,
Oh, it
sorry, I
was-
had a torturous 2.5-hour meeting, so I couldn't.